This knife is completely dull. It barely cuts butter, let alone leather. But what if I could bring it back to life to be razor sharp, using just basic beginner tools? In this video, we're going to look very briefly at why blades dull over time. Then we're going to jump into an experiment to see if we can make this blade razor sharp and see what we can learn along the way. I'll throw in some beginner hacks that I find make this much easier throughout the video. We'll finish with how best to maintain your leather blade so it doesn't get dull and keeps you crafting with really nice precise cuts. So what causes the blade to deform or dull over time is a property called stress. Stress is the force that you apply over the area that you apply it on. So when you apply a lot of force over a thin area, your stress goes up. Now blades are actually taking advantage of that. All of the force that you're pushing down onto the leather is being put through a really thin area, which allows you to cut through the leather really easily. And as a rule, when you push on something, it pushes back with the same force. So all that force is actually being pushed on the edge of the blade as well. This causes the blade to bend on a microscopic level and forms imperfections along the length of the blade. So then when you're cutting, it drags more on the leather. So these tiny imperfections make it much more difficult to cut and make the edge much rougher. So I think this blade is too dull to be brought back to life with just honing. So we're going to test two ways of doing this. Number one, we're going to hone it with a compound strop. So honing realigns the existing edge of the blade, and the process here involves straightening these microscopic teeth by applying some light pressure and friction. So then step two is going to be sharpening and removing some metal to get rid of the damages and chips that are in the edge. And the process here is grinding down the blade to redefine its geometry and create a new straight cutting edge. So let's do some initial cuts to see what we're working with. Now I've got some really thick veg tan here, and this has got a firm temper. So this will be a good measure of how dull our blade is. So straight away, whilst cutting this leather, I can feel how rough the edge is. The blade is dragging with so much friction as I pull it through the raw veg tan. And we got absolutely no luck with the paper trick either. So for honing, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our strop and we're going to apply some polishing compound to it. So to make a strop, you want a nice thick piece of veg tan, and this will act as your flexible honing stone. Now, this blade is just a single edge, so I only need to do one side. And as you can see, this blade has quite a thick edge and it angles down. So I want to make sure that I maintain that angle when I hone it. Let's do around 10 or so passes on the strop, and that should be good enough to test it out. So we have our polishing compound, which is our chromium oxide suspended in the wax solid. And here the superfine particles allow us to create that mirror finish on the edge of the blade. Now maintaining that angle is really important. With every hone of the blade, we want to straighten those teeth in the exact same direction. So grabbing some more leather scraps, we can test it out with a few cuts. Straight away I can tell it's much smoother and there's a lot less friction when pulling it through the leather. But you can tell it's just not cutting cleanly here. We are needing multiple cuts to make it through this thick leather. And as you can see, it's a little bit better, but it's still not perfect. It's not razor sharp. So I think the edge has gone and we need to bring it back with sharpening. If you got any value out of this video so far, please like it and subscribe for future sharpening hacks. Before we dive in, drop a comment down below. How do you usually sharpen your blades? I'd love to hear what's working for you. Okay, let's bring out the sandpaper. And thanks so much to one of my subscribers for doing an excellent job of explaining how sandpaper grits actually work and what the numbers mean. So we don't want to remove too much material, so I'm going to start with something quite high, around 1500 grit. Let's wet the sandpaper and let's try and match the angle of this blade. We're going to do around 10 passes with the sandpaper. Now we don't want to go too flat with the angle because otherwise we'll scratch the surface of the blade. But if we don't want to go too steep because then we won't make it sharp enough. So test it out and find out what works best for your blade. Now the water here on the surface of the sandpaper is doing two things. It's reducing the friction and it's also helping reduce the amount of metal dust that we create whilst we sharpen the blades. Now let's talk about burrs for a moment. Now a burr is the thinnest part of the edge that actually has begun to roll over as you sharpen it. And a rolled burr doesn't create a nice clean cut, but it is a very good indicator that you've sharpened one side of your blade really well. Now to see if we have a burr, we can very carefully use our finger on the edge of the blade. Be very careful with this. Now you don't want to go side to side on this because you could cut yourself. You just want to very lightly feel to see if there has been a burr created on the edge of your blade. And the burr will always develop on the opposite side to the face that you've been sharpening. And this is because of the direction that you're sharpening it in, and you cause the edge to roll over. So we want to remove a burr using our compound strop and by honing. So let's do this now. Now I'm actually going to hone both sides of the blade. I'm going to hone the cutting edge to polish that edge and smooth out any imperfections. Then I'm also going to hone the flat edge to remove that burr that we've just created that's rolled over as we've sharpened it. Polishing compound is like a super fine sandpaper, and the amount of material it takes off is so small that it allows you to create those mirror finishes rather than removing material like you would with a coarser, grittier sandpaper. Okay, and here's the moment of truth. Let's test it out on some leather scraps. So you can tell there's a huge difference. It's really cleanly cutting through the leather, but here you can tell by the shaking of my hand how much pressure I'm having to put down to cut through the leather. So for me, this is not good enough. I need to go back to the drawing board and start from the beginning. I was missing one fundamental thing. So reflecting back on my first attempt, I definitely made a big improvement. But it wasn't a razor sharp blade that would just cut through any piece of leather, no problem. And I think the problem is that I was starting at a way too higher grit. So I was working with around a 1500 grit, and that will remove some material, but it doesn't give you the power to reshape the edge of the blade that is dulled over time. So I'm starting down at 400 grit and working up in increments of 200 grit. That will allow me to really sharpen out the edge of that blade, and it will allow me to slice through veg tan with absolute ease. So don't worry, when you start out with lower grit sandpapers, you will see that the edge looks all rough and marked up, but over time, as you move up the grits, you'll get that mirror polish finish. You'll also get this slurry of metal filings mixed with the water, which is a great sign. We can see that we're removing a good amount of material, we can feel the burr on the opposite edge appearing, and then once we're at a high enough grit, we can move on to our honing. So here we're keeping that angle the same. We're doing 10 to 15 passes to hone the blade to that mirror finish. And you can see it here. It's reflecting the light. I can basically see my face in it. Now I'm super excited to test this out. And what a difference. It's now cutting through the leather with such ease. You can see by my hand movements how little pressure that I need to apply to actually nicely cut through this thick veg tan. And I can even skive the edge of the veg tan with this blade. What a difference. So it took us a while, but we definitely made progress and we learned a huge amount along the way. I was starting out with way too high a grit, so dropping that down to 400 and then slowly working up from there in increments of about 200 grit really helped to improve that edge. And the polishing compound created that beautiful mirror finish on that edge. So you can see how important the polishing compound is on both the front and the back face. But we didn't get it razor sharp, we couldn't cut hairs with it, but it's definitely a huge improvement. Now I can craft with this blade rather than sitting at the back of my workshop. Maybe it's not quite sharp enough to cut hairs because I didn't make it razor sharp or because of the thickness of the blade and the angle. Drop a comment down below what I can do to improve this process and achieve that sharpness that we crafters all crave. If you liked this video, you may enjoy one of my other ones. So maybe check out a video up on the screen or on my channel now. Thanks so much for watching.